I raced my fastest ever half marathon. And I don't know how I feel about it. Hey. Hey. Welcome back to episode 2 of Tremblant 435. I've never raced a half marathon before, standalone. The only times that I've raced that distance have been on the back end of an Ironman 70.3, so that's after a bike, and in the middle of a full marathon. So at Chicago, my current half marathon PR was 132, but I finished that race in 3:13, so you can tell how badly I fell off in the last 5 kilometers. So I raced this at the Hypothermic Half Marathon in Vancouver, which is a course that just goes around the Stanley Park seawall out and back. I didn't really train for it specifically. I just put it in the first few weeks of my training block as a spontaneous kind of race to sort of see where my fitness at and get some baselines for my threshold and paces going forward. And the only taper I did for it was I moved my training around just to give myself some lighter days of training before the race, but I wasn't tapered by any means. So for this race video, I just wanted to go over how the race went, how I feel about it, what I did to prepare and to race it, and what it means going forward for my training in going hopefully under 4:35 at Ironman 70.3 Mont Tremblant this June, which is still 17 weeks away. So I guess this goes back all the way back to Monday, where Monday I had a double session with a 1-hour zone 2 base bike in the morning. And then in the evening, I had a 9-kilometer run with 4 800-meter repeats. Then going into Tuesday, I had a TT swim to reestablish my critical swim speed. This didn't go very well. My critical swim speed after swimming for 3 weeks now was slower than it was 3 weeks ago. I don't know why this happened. I think it was just not my day. I hadn't been in the pool much the past week, and I think my laziness in the swim, I usually tend to put off swimming if I have to drop a leg in my training, and I think my laziness has been coming through already. So bad triathlete, Gabriel, but I just decided to continue training with my last critical swim speed that I did 3 weeks prior, which was 2 seconds per 100 meters faster. So that happened. Then Wednesday, I had a threshold bike session, which was 90 minutes with 2 times 10 minutes at threshold. So that was brutal. Almost felt like I was going to throw up at the end, but it felt really good and my legs felt strong after that. Then Thursday, this is starting to creep up onto the race, which was on Saturday, February 15th. That day, I had a 90-minute base bike. This typically would have been my long bike, which is on the Saturday. But because I'm getting a lot of intensity in this half marathon, I decided to drop the VO2 intervals I would do in this bike and just move it to 90 minutes of zone 2 work. So I still get the same amount of volume, but the total intensity for the week will still be relatively the same and not too high. And then Thursday, I also started to carb load. I made spaghetti and meatballs, and I picked up my race bib from the kit, which was at a running room store downtown Vancouver. And then Friday came around the day before the race, so I rearranged my training so that Friday I could just have an easy swim so that I wouldn't be getting any extra stress on my legs the day before the race. But at work that day, everyone in my office has been getting sick, including my manager, and we had a weekly check-in that morning. So I don't know if this was placebo, race nerves, but I felt pretty bad as the day was continuing to go on. Recorded a little bit about myself. All right, day before the race, it is 9:08 p.m. Not feeling great, feeling a bit of a sickness coming on. After work, I was feeling tired, my legs were sore, not feeling too hot, so I skipped my shakeout swim today to try and just hold off the sickness and hopefully feel okay by tomorrow morning. Stomach was also upset. Pooped like 5 times today, so that's not a good sign. But I don't know. I didn't sleep well last night because I was nervous. I don't know why I'm nervous, because this is literally just a milestone to see where my fitness is at, and if it's not a good race, it's just a good workout. So not feeling too hot for tomorrow. I think I'm just gonna go to bed in a few minutes, and then we'll see how I feel tomorrow morning. And if I still feel okay, I'll try to send it. If I don't feel okay, I think I'll still try and send it. It's not the end of the world. It's one race that I signed up for spontaneously. So see how I feel, and let's send it. Saturday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m., So I did not sleep well. I found that in past races, I do not sleep well. I just get incredibly nervous. I think one thing I've learned about myself in racing is that I put a lot of weight into the results and a lot of my identity into what that number is. And I've sort of began to realize that while this may motivate me into training really hard, it also isn't great because my identity should not be in these numbers. My identity is ultimately in Christ and in everything else that makes up my life and not in racing. And so I really just need to realize that this is just running. And though it's really fun and I love it, it's just running. And I think if I continue to work on that mentality, I will hopefully be able to sleep better before races and have more fun in the process. For breakfast, I wanted to eat 2 hours before the race start, which is, I think, scientifically the way to go. I wanted to get some carbs and some fructose, so I had a bagel and some jam on top with nothing else. And then I put on my race kit, so I laid out my race kit the night before. And so for this race, I used my New Balance Fuel Cell Elite V2, which are like the Tokyo Design Studio collab, so they look great. I will say I love this shoe. It also feels really good. I had some Saucony running socks that I bought just because they were cheap. I wore my Tracksmith Alston half tights, which I love, though they do tend to slip down my waist a little bit. So I'm like low riding as I run sometimes. And then I wore a Tracksmith merino wool t-shirt underneath my racing singlet, which is a Nike Aeroswift singlet. And then for nutrition, I had 2 gels. The first was a GU caffeinated gel, which I had right before the race. And then I had a Morton 100 during the middle of the race, as caffeine won't really help you that late into the race, but I'll get into that later. So after I got my kit on and kit ready, I had a poop, used some Theragun on my IT band. My IT band on my left leg has been giving me some issues. And then I took the bus to go to Stanley Park where the race was starting. Okay, I'm about to leave for the race. It is 7:40 a.m. Race starts at 9. Feeling okay. Woke up, my throat is a little bit congested, sore. I think we're just gonna send it. I don't feel horrible, don't feel great either, but you know, this is just how it goes. So let's go. I got to Stanley Park around 8 a.m. I want to say. Had a little 750 meter jog warm up, and then just stretched, went pee, and got ready to do the race. And going into this race, looking at the past 2 years' results, the winner was around the 126 range. So knowing I was trying to run around that, I was like, hey, maybe I could win this race. So that was also something I was thinking about, and therefore I lined myself up at the very front of the pack. The pack was small, only about 150 people. Just my general race plan based on my previous workout that I did last week that I mentioned in the last episode, which I did 3x2 miles at half marathon pace. I did those at 4:07 per kilometer, and that felt really comfortable. In fact, a little bit too comfortable. So I was like, you know, maybe if it's a good day, I could hold on to something a little bit faster than that. But then again, I've never raced a half marathon before in itself. So I had no idea what the pace was supposed to feel like, no idea how bad it was supposed to hurt and what I should be looking for. So I was really just experimenting and seeing, you know, what can I do and what can I hold on and how bad is this gonna hurt. That was my plan, just to go out at 4:07 and hold it. And then if I can't hold it, so be it. If I can negative split it, so be it. So then 9 a.m. comes around and race start. Hypothermic half 2025. Let's go. So at the very start, some guy went off flying at like, I can't even tell you what pace, in the 3s. And then, so that was a little bit nice in the sense that I didn't have to worry about winning the race anymore. So that weight was lifted off of my chest. But then everyone else started really fast down this huge downhill. So the first kilometer, let me check my Strava. By the way, you should follow me on Strava so we can all give each other kudos. But I finished the first kilometer in like 3:53, but the first half of that must have been in the 3:30s. So I was flying out the gate, and I knew this. And then after I got down to the seawall, I was able to level myself out into the 4s, low 4s, like 4:03 per kilometer. And I was able to hold this for the first couple kilometers. I knew this was going out fast, but I felt good. And I was like, you know, there's no harm in trying. So this was also a very small race, so I was running with nobody because there were only about 10 runners in the sub 130 category. So I was maybe 15 seconds behind some guy running about the same pace in front of me, but for the whole race, I was practically by myself, which was a little bit hard mentally. I continued at this pace until the first turnaround, which was at about 6K, and then that meant you were going back to the halfway turnaround at the other end of Stanley Park. And so I was holding this at about 4:03 per kilometer, but then by kilometer 8, at which I recorded myself for the first and only time really doing this race.
Okay, this past kilometer 8, holding about 4:01.42 pace. Feeling a bit too fast, but not too fast, but see if you can hold it. Slow down to 4:07s, 4:10s, still coming in under 128. Running tangent as well. Let's go!
I was dying. I don't know how you're supposed to feel in a half marathon, but I was dying. I thought it was going to be like a marathon where the first 2/3 are pretty much chilling until you get to the last 10K and then you're dying, but this was not the case. I was just in pain the whole way. So I thought about slowing down, and I did slow down a little bit after 8K, and I think that helped, and it was a good idea. And so I continued to the second turnaround, which was the one at the halfway point. And at this point, I was also worrying about, am I going to turn around at the right spot? Because I missed the course announcement that announced the change in course. So I was a little bit worried about that, but thankfully they blocked off any other exits, so I knew where I was going. I had no other choice. But I came into the halfway point, and I was dying. Like, I came into this going at about 4:05, 4:07 per kilometer now, and I was dying. So I was thinking I wouldn't be able to hold this for the rest of the race. So after that point, knowing I still had a full length of Stanley Park and another turnaround to go, I think mentally it was pretty difficult. So I slowed down to maybe 4:08s, 4:10s even per kilometer. And at that point I was spacing out so much I forgot about my gel as well. So I took it at around 47 minutes, and that was later than I intended, but I don't think it really mattered in the end. And really, I feel like I could get away with not using a gel in a half marathon given how much carbs I would have stored in my body. At that point, I continued to the final turnaround. I was still holding about 4:10, 4:11 per kilometer. And by the time I reached the final turnaround, I was thinking to myself, you know, why am I doing this? Like, this is so unpleasant. And then by the final turnaround, I knew that I was just running to the finish line, so I started feeling a bit better mentally. And so I was able to pick up my pace to go back down to 4:05 per kilometer. And so for the last 5K, I was able to hold on to that. But the last 500 meters, you have to go back up that huge hill. So going up 30 meters of elevation at the end of a half marathon is not fun. I tried to pull out my phone to record myself, and I was in such pain. It just didn't happen. I mean, you can see the footage.
Oh my gosh. 126 something. Happy with that.
Finished in 1:26.27, which was a huge victory for me. Did a cool down for 1 kilometer.
Woohoo! Let's go!
Had a free brunch. Well, not a free brunch. It's a $99 brunch given the race entry, but it was added on free, which was great. And then took the bus home. And as I said at the start of this video, I think I have mixed emotions about this, because on one hand, I'm obviously over the hill excited that I ran a 126. I never in a million years would have imagined myself keeping this pace for this long. 2 years ago, I was barely able to run a 10K at 6 minutes per kilometer, and that was my maximum effort. Incredibly excited that I'm able to run this pace, and it's a huge encouragement for my training block. But on the other hand, this is the first race I haven't had anyone there to watch it and be there with at the finish line and celebrate with. And I think going back to the thesis of my first video that I posted, I really have learned to acknowledge and appreciate the community in running and how that motivates me to a degree that nothing else has been able to, and makes this all worth it. And I think not having it at this time just helped me appreciate it even more than I already can. And the realization of how empty it feels without it was a little bit sad. And so I think that just makes me want to continue to appreciate those around me and what they do for me in the sport, and to continue to build relationships so that I'm able to have community with me wherever I go, and hopefully provide community to others wherever they go as well, in whatever challenges people around me face, whether it's in running or school or work or anything else, so that I can be there to support them through that. And I think that's something I've been reflecting on after this race, and something that has been making me think about how this race went. And then going forward into what this means for my training, I think as I stated, I want to hopefully run a 1:28 half marathon at the end of my Ironman 70.3 to go under 4:35. And one rule of thumb that I've heard and I've seen play out in my last races was your run off the bike should be the same pace as a standalone run that is one event higher. So as I'm running a half marathon off the bike, I'd use my standalone marathon pace to determine my running pace. And you could do that same for a 10K to a half marathon if it was an Olympic distance triathlon. So if I plug it into calculator, basically a 1:26.27 is putting me at a 3-hour 26 marathon, which is a 1:30 half marathon. So at the moment, if I could run a 1:30 half marathon off the bike, I think I'm pretty confident that I could knock 2 minutes off of my half marathon time by then. So I'm really excited what this means going forward to possibly going faster on the run. I don't know how I'll do on the bike and the swim, if I'll need to make up time or it'll mean going further under 4:35, but ideally I hope to go faster. So I'm really encouraged by this. So overall, really stoked about this. I still can't believe this is the paces I'm able to go at, and I really am just so grateful for the whole process and everyone who's helped me along this way. And I hope this video provides you with some information and encouragement as well to continue to chase after your own goals, and to run your own marathon, whether that's in life or in other facets of life. So take care, and I'll see you in episode 3.